In the last example, we made a composite image by combining two different captures using layer masks, and we were very careful about creating those masks and fine-tuning the edges so the photos went together and looked natural and didn't show signs of being cut out and pasted on. In this example, we're going to use a different approach. We're going to use what Photoshop calls blend modes, B-L-E-N-D, blend modes. And the way blend modes combine pixel layers is using mathematics. So Photoshop has some calculations that it can do to determine if the pixels on a particular layer or to determine how the pixels on a particular layer should be blended with the pixels of the layers below. There are 27 blend modes in Photoshop. That's too many. I will tell you about 3 of them in this segment. And they're really probably the 3 most useful blend modes, at least that's what I have found. And you can just explore other ones as you have time. What you're seeing here is a picture of a nice sunset that I took up near Kingston, New York. And when I took the picture, the sun hadn't yet really set and provided these nice colors. Here's the capture that I took of that nice composition, and about 20 minutes later the sun set and gave me some beautiful colors in the clouds. So I wanted to put these 2 shots together, taken about 20 minutes apart, to give me this nice beautiful sunset. Now, as in the last example, there are steps in the rendering here that have nothing to do with compositing, and I'm not going to go through those in this segment just because I want to keep the segment short and focused on compositing. So let's start with our capture of the Hudson River up near Kingston, and let's just put another layer in here now with the capture of those nice sunset clouds. So just as we did it in the last example, I'm going to load that image of the clouds as a separate Photoshop document. I'm going to go into the layer stack on the right. I'm going to right click on that layer. I'm going to pick duplicate background, and in the center here for the target document I'll pick the sunset document. All right, so now if I flip over there, I see sure enough I have another layer with the clouds. It's not a very clever name for this document, background copy, though. This is the layer with the clouds. So let me just rename that. I'll double click on the name. I'll type clouds, and we're going to put the reflected clouds into the water separately from the clouds in the sky. So let me call this layer clouds water. Now I have to get it to blend in, right? So it's also not quite the right size or position. So I know that the way I can resize and move and transform a pixel layer is with the free transform. So on the Mac it's Command T, on the PC that's Control T. I'll do that. I get part of a bounding box. I'm going to hit Command 0 to see the whole bounding box. And the first thing I'm going to do is flip it over. So I'll right click inside there, say flip horizontal. Now I want to move it and scale it. And whereas in the last example I needed to be careful about preserving the aspect ratio, don't have to be that careful here, because the aspect ratio of clouds is who knows what the aspect ratio of clouds is. So I can kind of scale this and move it around and stretch it with impunity. I kind of like that part of the reflected clouds. I'm going to hit Command 0 again so I can see the bottom. Let me just stretch it out just a hair more here. I don't like that real dark spot at the bottom. Now, I'm trying to position it well in the composite image, but the problem is all I can see is this one layer. So right now, I'm going to shift the blend mode from normal to something else. So I'll go over into the layer stack. Clouds water layer is highlighted, and the blend mode is up at the top here. It's set to normal. If I click on that pull down, I see the 27 blend modes built into Photoshop, and I'm going to pick one called Overlay. Overlay is often useful when you want to add texture to an image, and these clouds are somewhat like texture. So I've got it in pretty good spot here, but what I'd like to do is move it up a little bit and then maybe stretch it out just a little more to get rid of that black strip at the bottom. Maybe something like that. That's not bad. So I'm going to click the checkbox up at the top of the screen now. And now there's a couple of things I see that I want to fix. The most obvious is I'm not only getting the clouds reflected in the water, but it's wrecking the top of the picture here. I don't want this layer to affect anything but this little reflected part down at the bottom where the clouds are showing. Well, you already know how to do that, right? In the last segment, we saw how we could put a layer mask on a pixel layer to control what parts of this layer are revealed and what parts are concealed. So I need a layer mask here. I don't need a very careful one. All I need is kind of a crude one just to indicate where this layer should impact the composite image. And then I also see some not defects but distractions, like these branches down here. Since this segment is not about removing distracting elements from images, let me just do that very quickly and not comment on it. If you want more details on how to do this, refer to my workshop on my website on non-destructive editing using Photoshop and Photoshop Elements. All right, so bear with me here for just a second. Okay, so now we have those distracting parts out. Now let me let's fix up the part of the image, or let's restrict the part of the composite image that this layer is affecting. So let's put a mask on here. In fact, let's start out with a mask that hides the entire layer. So I'll go up to the menu, I'll click on Layer, Layer Mask, Hide All. That'll put a mask on that's all black, and since black conceals, I'm concealing every pixel on this layer. But now I'm going to go get my paintbrush tool. I'm going to put white paint on my foreground color, so I can hit the letter D key on my keyboard to get the default colors, which is white for the foreground, black for the background. And now I have my paintbrush. Let's zip it up to 100% opacity, put a nice soft edge on it, and I'm going to start painting white paint onto the mask for this image, or this layer mask. There we go. I'm getting kind of a glowy edge there that I don't intend. So I'll hit the letter X to shift to black paint on the as the foreground color, and now I'm painting with black just to conceal some of the pixels on this layer. All right, now that I've done that, I see I'd like a little bigger reflected image of the clouds, so I'm going to highlight the pixel thumbnail again, Command T, Command 0, and I'm going to stretch it out a little more so that I see more reflected clouds. And I still don't like that black stripe down at the bottom, something like that. Okay, Command 0 to zoom to fit. And now the effect is just a little too strong. So what I'll do is I'll take the opacity slider and scale this back to something more like this. That's a pretty nice reflection of the clouds in the water. Now let's add the clouds to the sky. A couple of ways I could do that, but let's go get another copy of our cloud image. I'll duplicate the layer again, and once again the destination will be the sunset. I'll flip over there. There it is. Now I'm going to do Command T again to transform, Command 0 to see the whole thing. I'll flip it left to right. I will stretch it out so that I get clouds in the sky. Something like that. And once again, I'm going to change the blend mode. This time I'm going to use a little different blend mode, a blend mode called Multiply. And Multiply just takes the darker of either the pixels on this layer or the pixels below. Now, let me just kind of get this in a better position, and then I'm going to say a little more about the Multiply blend mode. I kind of like it right about there. All right, I'm going to click OK. Now, I'm going to hit Command 0 to zoom to fit. And we have the same problem here. It's pretty nice up in the sky, but it's wrecking the bottom. Okay, so we're going to use the same technique to fix it, though. Let me do a Command minus to zoom out. I'm going to put a mask on here, just a crude one, so that this layer only affects the sky up here. We could use the same technique of putting a black mask and painting it white, or we could put a white mask and paint out with black. Let's do it that way, since we did the other way on the bottom. We should rename this layer. Let's call this cloud sky. Okay, now let's add a white mask to this layer. Layer mask, reveal all. Okay, and now I'll get my paintbrush with black paint, and I will paint black onto the mask everywhere but up in the sky. Sometimes, just to make sure that I've done what I intend to, after I paint like this, I'll do an Option or Alt click on the mask just to see it, and I can see I missed just a tiny little bit over here. So let me paint that out. All right, I'm going to Option click again. All right, now if I turn the visibility layer on and off, sure enough, I'm just affecting the clouds in the sky now. Now, I wanted to return and make a comment on the blend mode of multiply, because something quite wonderful is happening here. In fact, I'm going to do a Command 1 to zoom in at a pixel level, and I'm going to turn the visibility of this layer on and off. And look what's happening, right? Where the image below this has kind of a bright white sky and then these dark branches. When I add this pixel layer and set the blend mode to multiply, the cloud pixels on this layer are replacing the white sky, but not these dark branches. Why? Because multiply takes the darker of the pixels, either on this layer or from the layer below. So the result we're getting is like a perfectly combined image of this sky, branches, and clouds. And there's no way we could have made a mask that would do this as well. Right? There's no haloing. We get this perfect blending of the branches and the clouds, and it's because the mathematics inside Photoshop are going pixel by pixel through this layer and determining where the darker pixels are to use for the composite image. Okay, so when blend modes work, they're fantastic. Right? They don't always work. They don't always give you the result that you want. So, you know, it's sort of a trial and error, but just know that multiply is a blend mode that takes the darker pixels. The inverse of multiply is called screen. It takes the lighter pixels and uses that, whichever the lighter pixels are, either on the layer with that screen blend mode or the pixels from the layer below. And then the third blend mode is overlay, which increases contrast, right? It takes both lighter and darker pixels to make the composite image. Okay, I'm going to do a Command 0 now to zoom out. I think I would probably play around with the tone and the saturation of the colors here to complete the retouch. But for the purpose of compositing, these are the steps that you would take to combine these two images. All right? So I hope that made sense. If not, go back and take another look. And that wraps up this segment.